Yeah, I will start by saying hi. I've decided to, as a moderator, be more of an audience moderator, or like maybe the ideal audience. So I will stop Stefan when he's boring, or I will ask him to maybe develop further into specific topics. But I will be, standing on the side here and also see if you have any questions during the talk. I will try to pick up on them. And I let basically why we did this also. Stefan really doesn't need a moderator to moderate him, to get him talking in that sense. And also he has lots of material to show, so we're going to let him do that. And my role will just be like the extended you, let's say. I don't have to really go introduce you so much. You could, and this is also the second talk you have in Dramaten och situation, which then means that we're in this conflict of showing the same material twice or not. Is the light bothering you? Maybe could we fix those two? Is like right in the face of some people. Can we fix that? Dramaten, no problem. It also makes sense to see people though, since it's about you. No, so Stefan's going to show works, also not trying to conflict so much with his previous talks, but also considering that some people maybe weren't here in the previous talks, so there will be some overlaps. And I would like to push for some overlaps too, since some of the works he talked in the previous talks about something else. It's really putting audience forward, or the situation of the audience is specific, let's say it that way. So I'll let you introduce yourself and the Rimini Protokoll and do whatever you do, and I try to bother you as much as I can. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
Welcome.
Thank you. Doubly introduced. So basically, my name is Stefan Kaegi, and what I'm displaying here is the website of the company Rimini Protokoll, which is also Helgard Hau and Daniel Wetzel, who are at this moment actually in Oslo, so not so far from here, preparing a big Enemy of the People Ibsen show where 100 people will be on stage. So I have to be alone here. But some of you might have seen my work, Radio Muezzin, here last year, actually, in summer. That's a kind of work that sometimes I do, or we do. Let's call it documentary work, where people are on stage talking about, I guess, their lives, about things they have experienced, and then thereby somehow maybe transforming the perception of what could be a stage good for. Could it be a window to the world, is a question behind. But today I'm going to talk about other projects that take you rather into other spaces and maybe bring audience to the center, because as Tim Etchells put it once, there's a word for people like you, audience. And one audience space which I find very inspiring, and it's actually the biggest performance ever happening in the year in Berlin, and I recommend it to you to go and see it, is, where is that now? Is this one. It's just happened 4th of April 2012, and it will happen next April again. It's bigger than any show Dramaten can do here. It hosts 8,000 people of an audience, and when you go there, you see capitalism performing. In a very Shakespearean way, power struggles among the board managers, big amounts of money being moved in all directions. So everything you need for a good play of theater. That's what we thought, and that's why we made a project some years ago, which is called Daimler Hauptversammlung. That was also the title of our show, and this way our show was announced in the theater program of the Hebel am Ufer Theater, which is sort of the theater space that we most produce work in Berlin in. So you had maybe a play by Heiner Goebbels. No, I don't think it was there, but could have been a Heiner Goebbels show, or it could have been newest version of Enemy of the People, and then day after it was Daimler shareholders meeting. If you wanted to see that show, you needed to inscribe yourself quite some weeks in advance, because it's not a public performance normally. You need to have shares. So what we did is we bought shares, quite a lot of them, but in small packages. We found a lot of people who had shares and who would be willing to give their invitation card to that theater performance of reality away, and hand it over to one person that we thought that could be our audience member. And you needed to be willing to stand up early in the morning, because it was 10 o'clock in the morning starting the show. It's actually a long performance. I think it's, yeah, maybe somewhere here it is hidden, the dramaturgy of it. Anyway, what we did in this case was we didn't stage anything ourselves, but we mainly transformed what we looked at as a performance, to transform it into, to decontextualize, you could say, into theater by framing it. What we did then is we published a book, which you normally have similar books like this in Dramaten when you go here to the theater, which allow you to see here. That's, for instance, the page about, I don't know if you can read it from back there, but it's basically saying who are performing the main roles. In that show, which is here Dieter Zetsche, he's like the CEO of the company. These people are the board members. And then you have, what is interesting actually, through the shareholders' laws, everybody who has a share can ask a question. And a lot of different organizations use that. On the one hand, fund managers. On the other hand, people from activists group who want to talk about why Daimler do you own shares of EADS, which is also a weapon manufacturer. Or people want to ask a question about why is my car not working with the new door you installed on it. All sorts of different questions. So these are the people, they're mentioned here as well as part of the cast. They are the back office, people who are ready to answer those questions as soon as they come up. And there's the buffet as well. Our program publication also included background information. My role, so audience, in that case was our audience coming in. As they're not normally shareholders, they might not know what an audience behaves like in that kind of show. The text explanation, that's the law about shareholders. That's about the play as sort of an introduction. Dramaturgy, the time schedule. It took more than 12 hours. A bit boring sometimes. Sometimes quite exciting. Stage design. So we had, it looks like a Communist Party event, but it's, so it has a big blue backdrop that you don't see in the black. But here you see the cars, part of the set design. The show costs more than any other show in Berlin every year. That's why they are making sure through 2 rehearsals that nothing goes wrong, because if legally somebody could sue Daimler for having done something wrong on that day, they might be forced to do it one more time, which would cost, I think we had an estimation saying that would cost about 7 million euros to do it one more time. And then what was the most important for us, we had some interviews of people who are performing there in a certain way, but the most important part, that's a bit how it looks in there. We tried to show what is the context of the actors that we have on stage. This is the board, and so you could see that some of the actors are not only performing in Daimler, they're also performing in Lufthansa and in Deutsche Bank, and sort of to see what is the subtext that they're performing as well. Kuwait is the biggest shareholder.
Stefan, I have a problem following. I mean, what the actual performance was in How, and what was the real deal?
No. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for being a good lawyer of the audience. I was unclear. It is a bit complicated. There was no performance in the theater. The only thing we actually did is we brought the theater audience into the ICC, which is the Congress Hall. I can show you a bit of how it looks there. And we just reframed. Take it like Duchamp makes a ready-made and he puts the pissoir in the museum. We brought the audience and put it in the Congress Hall.
The actual Congress, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a TV report, because we couldn't really film there. It's illegal to film in there, but the TV can. So that's how it looks outside on that day. That was broadcasted in the same evening after the show. This looks like theater because we have masks, but it wasn't us. It was the union, actually, who was trying to protest on this occasion against young people being unemployed. Or actually not having apprenticeships anymore. Then you come into the space, and here you see security checks, which are quite big, like in an airport.
150 Leute hat Rimini Protokoll mitgebracht. Dazu haben sie Aktionäre überzeugt, ihr Recht auf Teilnahme abzugeben.
So there are some of them are our audience members. You can recognize them by this book. But most of the people coming in there are just Daimler shareholders.
But you bought your ticket in How? You went to the ticket office and bought a ticket for this? Or how did you get
You
your
had
audience?
to book 2 weeks in advance, because we had to do some pre-organization in order to get a share. Because only people who are shareholders or who are friends of shareholders and receive the invitation card from them are allowed in there. And in a way, our main sort of role was granting the access for them. And inside, now, that's Helgard, by the way, a bit fast. So, there we see the audience. 7,000 people are there in the beginning at 10 o'clock in the morning, when really the CEO holds his speech. That's the main thing. Then by 11, people start moving to the buffet, and then in the afternoon it starts to get really empty. But in the evening, actually, only the votation happens, which is to confirm the board or not. Now, I'm going to show you just a small excerpt of the show, just one more time to keep it clear. We didn't direct anything in there. The directors are Daimler Investors Holding. Yes? We had about 200 people from our side.
Okay, then ordningsfråga. When you want to talk, you have to talk to the microphone, because it's also recorded and sent on the web. So we do re-asking the question. Yeah.
Very, very spontaneous question. How many tickets did you release for your performance?
I should give a different answer now, so just to confuse everybody. Yeah, so you don't know where our 200 audience members are. Somewhere in them. They sometimes could recognize each other by having the book, or some of them because we also had a telephone line where you could listen to opera music when it was too boring. So you could see them with phones. But I wanted to show you just the one short thing that changed, because we actually 3 months before the event, we got contacted by Daimler Investors Holding, because they had found out, oh, they're announcing our play in their theater. It's our play. So they came across with 3 lawyers and tried to find ways to forbid us. And we discussed it, and they were asked that, what are you going to do? Are you going to undress naked? Are you going to scream? And we said, no, we just want to watch. And they got really confused, but had to admit that they cannot forbid it to do it, because we are legal holders of shares. So basically just. And then we heard later that they got training for 2 days. The poor CEOs had to sit down by a media trainer, how to react on actors running onto stage, because they were sure that we are preparing some guerrilla activity. So they were prepared, and the only thing that really changed then in the show because of us was this. This is the opening speech of not actually the CEO, but the legal advisor, Notar. I'm not sure, it's probably the same word in Swedish.
Also alle Teil des Stücks, auch wenn Daimler von der Rimini Protokoll-Idee offensichtlich nicht begeistert ist.
Wir sollten die Regeln des Anstands einhalten, auch werde ich Störungen des Ablaufs der Hauptversammlung nicht zulassen.
We should stick to the rules of this shareholders meeting, and I will not admit any kind of disturbances.
Dies ist hier weder ein Schauspiel noch ein Theaterstück, und es gelten die für alle Aktionäre und Aktionärsvertreter bindenden Regeln.
So this is not a theater play nor a performance, and all the rules that apply to annual meetings apply to this occasion.
But you can never say that on stage, no, without it becoming performance. It doesn't matter if you say it's not theater. In a theater, it's still theater, no?
Yeah, I mean, there is this Asterix, probably you read that one, where he stands on stage in a Roman theater and is saying, this is not theater, this is not theater, and the Roman audience is clapping at Asterix, because obviously the more you try to negate, the more you fall into the trap in a way. So this is, I just started as obviously not all our works are like this. If you saw Radio Muezzin, it's a very different one where we rehearsed for a long time. But it was in a way interesting how the power of the gaze, in a way, of the witnessing that normally in a theater audience comes along with the idea of entertainment, suddenly can transform into something which I guess is more putting an uncertainty onto the performers in that case, because it is really it was a very impressive event for me as well. I've been there once the year before to see how it looks, and I really do recommend you to go there, because you hardly ever see those big CEOs, and they're forced to be there. They're forced to be there 10 hours long. And normally, I guess, to have 1 minute of a meeting with them costs you, I don't know how much money. And there they just have to sit there and listen to everybody with their questions. So it's an apparently or seemingly democratic sort of ritual. On the other hand, it's not at all, because in the evening, before we left, there was this vote about the board. And there were only about 200 people left, about 100 from our side and about 100 from Daimler's side. But there was an index showing how many shareholders' capital is still present in the room, and it was, I think, 95%. Because obviously there are some more equal than others in that seemingly democratic game. So that is like one. I'll just maybe go into another direction, except for if you have any. If you just have questions, then just.
I just wanted to take the quite obvious, but anyway, audience situation here. It's actually, I mean, you're orchestrating it, but it's already there, like a ready-made, like you said. But also, it's the audience that makes it a theater situation, no?
Yeah, well, yes. It does. On the other hand, there are always like 7,000 are seated there every year, and still it's not looked at as a theater performance. What was interesting is that there was that year a lot of reports about Daimler in the feuilleton part of newspapers, because with us came journalists who were coming to write about the new Rimini Protokoll project, and so they were sort of forced, as we were not doing almost anything, they were forced to write about Daimler as theater analysis, and that suddenly transformed the thing. And on the other hand, a lot of economy journalists from the economic page of the newspaper were writing about, in a way, theater, because they were felt aggressed or attacked, sort of, by the ones from the other page of the newspaper. So, yeah, so that's what audience can do. Sometimes,
Stefan, we have a question here.
Yeah.
So what was the follow-up? Did you change the Daimler people thinking?
I don't know, actually. I talked, well, we didn't really meet. I met one person afterwards who was actually coming with the lawyers 3 months before. And then she came after the show and asked us if she could get more program books, because our book, she found, was actually quite an interesting research. And I guess also she wanted to be updated in what's going on in the artist reflection about Daimler, about her company. But I think it was actually also interesting because there were, in the pages that I flipped quicker through, there were reports about who are all the people participating in it. And it wasn't just the people that are normally featured, the big font managers, but there were also the there were people who were trying to agitating against Daimler holding Mitsubishi. At the time they still had a big chunk of Mitsubishi, and they were saying, like, that's not a good deal, you should get rid of it. And there were others saying, you still have to apologize for what Daimler did in Argentina during the military dictatorship, where some union people were disappeared. Anyway, and so there were a lot of different interests into the performance, and I think that was also very interesting in a way that probably happens in any theater performance, that you have people coming from very different angles of interest. Some people just to get entertained, some people because they read the book, some people because they just want to, I don't know, go for a drink afterwards with the person who insists in going to see the show. So you have, and that interests normally never get manifested. Is that an English word? Yeah, never become visible, sort of in the show, and there they become. I'll nevertheless maybe jump into a completely different project, which is called Chacara Paraíso, and it was also inspired by something that I saw in reality, and we took very different ways to transform it. The experience that I had, I also, again, I sort of was in a place where I felt like I met. I saw something looking like theater in reality, and I was very surprised by it. I was in São Paulo in the biggest police training camp of South America, which has 10,000 of military police soldiers, well, policemen, being trained. And in order to train them to invade slums, favelas, they built up a stage design which looks like a favela, but it is not, in order to train. And so this is a video just from the beginning of the project. I come to later what the project then was. So we had a young policeman who is actually from a favela himself explaining to us what it is.
Aqui é o barraco, né? São bem, geralmente, bem nessa madeira, geralmente, que é feito, madeira, são madeiras, são... Os sequestradores, eles não se preocupam muito com como que a pessoa vai ficar, não se preocupam muito com isso. Se você poder descer aqui comigo, vou dar uma descida aqui. Mas, por exemplo, aqui tem uma porta. Se aqui tem uma porta, eles já vão chegar para meter o pé na porta e já vai abordar quem é que está lá dentro. Entendeu? Geralmente no cativeiro, aqui assim, tem sempre um quarto. Geralmente é um colchão que sempre fica a vítima. Vamos ver como que está a vítima. A vítima está aqui no chão. Como que ela está? Procurar conversar com ela. Geralmente elas estão com o psicológico abalado. Eles são bem assim, eles são bem cruéis. Geralmente eles põem fundo falso no teto. Como no chão não tem como, geralmente favela é bem rústica. Ou é terra ou é só pedra. Então eles põem em cima, ou eles escondem droga, ou eles escondem armas lá dentro. Geralmente moradores fornecem informações. Ó, vocês estavam indo ali, correu gente pra lá.
So, well, it goes on, but this was just our beginning research meeting that we saw this entire space where apparently groups of 50 or more policemen are training, rehearsing how the real performance should be, which then can have obviously real impacts. It's a bit cynical to call it theater, but the rehearsals in a way have very similar implications. The policemen using costumes, they're being restricted again to a sort of text as a basis, which is the law in the end. And we wondered, how can we work with Brazilian policemen? It was in a time about 2003 and 2004 where, because of an incident in a prison, there was a quite open war against the police, also from mafia side. There was, in a short row, there were 50 people killed policemen killed by sort of snipers from the underworld. And then the police again responded by invading favelas and acting very violently onto groups which they just pre-assumed in a way that they would be part of the gangs. So it was a very heated up situation. It's also just 15 years after, 20 years after the end of the military dictatorship, and the military police especially still is a very restricted world. Sort of people in Brazil don't trust very much the police. When something happens, they would rather run away than call the police as a help. So we were wondering, how can we work with theater that is normally a medium where you have somebody on a stage where the light is and the audience where there's hopefully no light blinding. So could it be, was our question, more a place where you actually come close to people that you normally have a lot of prejudgments? So we decided that the audience in this situation needs to be coming very close and interacting in a way and meeting these people that they would normally never talk to. And the way we did it was we had a place in the Avenida Paulista, which is sort of quite a central location in São Paulo, where a cultural center is, and it had an entire floor which was under renovation in that time. And we had casted 14 people who were either part of the police or part of a group that was sort of affected by police, family of policemen, and we somehow had them in one place together. That was complicated because the police organism is very hierarchical, and they in the beginning always said, well, we would love to participate, but the boss needs to say yes to it. So for instance, we had one person from the telephone central where all the calls come in. If something happens, she receives 600 calls every day and needs to judge within 40 seconds in an average if it's a fake call or not, and then send a police car or not. She, we found, was a very interesting person to speak, because she also came actually from a favela herself, where you need to decide on some point, do you want to join the police or the other side? So she said, yes, I would love to participate, but only if the boss said yes. As the boss never said yes, because they kept us waiting, we decided to have her in a way behind an invisible blinder glass. And the tour that you actually as an audience made, you walked through that building and came from room to room. So I'll just show you a little bit of short impressions from that. It started actually with this, with a civil policeman who couldn't be there himself because he was afraid of the audience, he's told us. So we had his voice recorded talking about the Avenida Paulista, which you saw from up there through binoculars. And the audience would come and have a sit in a... And this is the telephone person that you meet.
Todos estão me escutando?
Sim.
Meu nome é Soldado Flávia, trabalho há mais de 10 anos na polícia, atendo em média 800 ligações diárias. Um certo dia, um homem me liga e fala, não, eu vou me matar, eu vou me matar. Eu vou me matar, eu vou me matar. Qual o seu nome? Não, eu tô ligando pra polícia só pra falar que eu vou me matar. Alguém do grupo já tentou se matar? Não? Você aqui de vermelho ou rosa? Alguém do grupo já ligou 190?
Já.
Qual foi o teor da ocorrência?
A gente estava na casa da Flora e o vizinho começou a bater na vizinha e quebrar todas as coisas na casa.
E ela começou a chorar muito.
Uhum.
A gente ligou outra vez também. Lembra aquela menina na rua que estava chorando?
So you needed to interact directly with her in that case. Next room was somebody who is part of the musical body of the police forces.
Napoleão Bonaparte tem uma frase que fala assim: me deem uma banda na frente da minha tropa que eu ganho o mundo.
And he explained to us that he's normally, when you're in the police and part of the musical forces, they don't take you really serious because they think you're an artist. But through this muscle that he uses as a bass player, his hand is very strong, and half of the day he spends in the police car going around. So he's actually one of the best shooters in his forces, and he actually even showed us how he...
Isso daqui parece um cano de uma arma, isso daqui é a empunhadura do revólver, e aqui onde ficaria o gatilho fica a empunhadura do meu braço. E trabalhando na rua, se aquilo ali fosse um meliante, eu tivesse com a minha .40 e tivesse que proteger vocês agora sem muito avisado, o meliante, aliás, teria tomado 2 tiros no mesmo lugar e eu teria estourado ele todinho. E vocês não correriam perigo de jeito nenhum. Vocês queiram passar, por gentileza, no próximo estágio, que é por trás desse biombo dos tiros, que é a próxima porta ali.
So we went from room to room and got closer that you would normally dare to police people, and obviously couldn't really avoid the fact to realize that they're actually human beings, which troubled, I guess, people here. That somebody who is a dog trainer. In this room you met somebody who who was already a policeman during the military dictatorship, so, and has a bit of idealizing memory of the time. Next room there was somebody who had a military judgment going on about the fact that he had just killed somebody, and the question was auto-defense or not.
Tem bar do lado de casa, por volta de uns 20 metros. Quando eu passava em frente, tinha
rapaz. And in the last room you would...
Começou a me xingar, virou coxinha.
Yeah, and so you met about 12 different people in
nessa discussão saiu
interactions.
Conhecia de vista, esse conhecia de vista.
And we had on one part then a reconstruction of this favela, where somebody would sort of take you through.
Vamos fazer uma simulação de assalto ao supermercado, um homem e uma mulher. Eles se evadiram, adentrou a favela, e nós vamos ter que localizá-los. Varredura em cima e embaixo, sempre atento.
Ei, você, é a polícia!
Eu sou repórter, senhor policial.
Coloque sua câmera no chão e as mãos onde eu possa ver!
Tudo bem, senhor policial. Por favor, não atire. Estou um pouquinho nervoso que o senhor está apontando a arma para mim. Ok, vamos conferir. Ok. Tem mais um elemento?
What was really impressive in this work was to get to know how fast policemen are trained to decide, is this true or is this not true? Is it good or is it not? When you talk with police people, they're always very fast in their answers, and they might be wrong, but they're trying to sort of protect themselves. Daniel, I think it's your point to defend the audience.
No, I'm not defending. But this is super site-specific, no? What has happened in society with a piece like this, and what is the context it's shown? Is it a festival or is it a theater that sells the tickets, or because it's, I mean, these kinds of experts of reality, or whatever you call them. I mean, these people that are doing their own job and explaining it to an audience. It is, if it's not a theater context, it's also hard to call it theater sometimes. This could also be like a introduction to how the police works in the favelas, no?
Yes, but on the other hand, the whole argument or the way that we rehearsed quite well how they would talk about themselves, so they were not just improvising, and it was very biographical, so they would give away a lot about the role that they play, which is a social role, a restrictive role in a way, in a sort of very staged situation, because it happened inside a building that it belongs to a theater. And it even toured. We brought it to Munich.
That's my next question. Did it tour? Yeah.
We brought it to Munich, but then in order to make it sort of understandable, we combined the Brazilian policemen from maybe one of the most dangerous city in the world, with the Munich police people, who are maybe, they say it's one of the safest city in the world, and who are highly equipped. But in the end, that was the interesting thing in the meetings, they work with the same tools. They have, for instance, instead of these, you see these drawings of people that they're shooting at in order to train. In Munich, what they had is a shooting cinema. It's a cinema where they're showing a scene where somebody is unpacking a bag, and then somebody is actually where the audience is, and with a gun in his hand, and he needs to shoot as soon as he sees it's not a passport that he's putting out, but a gun. And then he will shoot it, and then the screen has a lot of holes, and the bullets fly down. So it's more technologically equipped, but it's in the end the same system.
And how many audience members at a time do you take in, and how many performances did you perform of this?
So that was for, I think we had groups of 10 people every 10 minutes going in, and then they would sort of go from one position to another. And maybe that is a good transition, or yeah, you have
no, but
question, yeah?
you didn't answer that, the context thing. I mean, what did this produce in the local community? Did it produce a discussion around how the police works, or something like this?
It was complex, because a lot of the theater audience in Brazil is left-wing rather than on the right-wing side, and grew up as students at the time when the military police did raids in the students' living compounds, because they were doing strikes, the government was against, and so it was hard to give away the prejudgments that you have. But on the other hand, I think it was an important transformation, because on one moment Brazil, I think, as a society also needs to realize that the police needs to be seen as something that is paid by the city, and therefore should be understood as a democratic organism. And on the other hand, for the police people, it was also a very borderline situation. One of them said, I want to be armed when I'm there. And we were like, it's not okay to have real guns inside our theater space. But he said, well, but I'm going to meet audience, and I don't know who they are. And we told them, well, they're going to meet you, and you're a real person, and they don't know who you are. So it should be a one-to-one situation. But in the end, I don't know if you had a gun or not. We didn't check them at the entrance.
Yeah, so 2 questions. The name Chácara Paraíso, is it the name of the piece, or is it the name of the training ground?
Both.
Okay. For people who don't speak Portuguese, it means paradise farm. So it's quite, yeah, I was quite like...
Yeah, actually it's the name of the neighborhood where the police training camp is. And
okay.
I think they adopted it therefore. I don't think they invented it so poetically.
No, but still, it's quite interesting to keep it as a name,
That's
you know, for such, for that kind of space. And also maybe you know, if I'm just re-asking Daniel's last question, then don't answer. Otherwise, I would like you to kind of say something more, or maybe I missed it. But I'm not quite clear on what your aim was with this, or your starting point. Like just now you said that you think, I don't know if it's you or if it's you three as a collective, that you think that Brazilian people need to see this as something that is paid by society and therefore a democratic. I'm a bit confused if you had an aim to kind of, we want to humanize the police in the eyes of the audience, or we want to create a space for them to voice something that they cannot normally, or, you know, what. I don't know if I'm making myself clear.
Well, first of all, I have to say it's not a work by Rimini Protokoll. I sometimes also work in other collaborations. I forgot to say that it's a work that I did together with Lola Arias, who was an Argentinian writer and theater maker as well, who was sort of important to have also somebody from South America in. I sort of grew partly up in Brazil. That's why also I'm not completely external to the phenomenon. But I think it's hard to talk about a name in that theater will never reach a target as clearly or easily as a policeman's bullet when it's well trained. So I guess my interests are always, first of all, I think artistic on one hand, and on the other hand society interest that bring me to somewhere, and then I start the research. My first job that I had when I left school was a journalist, and I think some of it still remains the same. I just didn't like the fact that as a journalist I always needed to write an article in 3 hours, and then it was expected to be the truth published in the newspaper next day. So I in a way changed the medium, because on one hand I believe that there are more communicative mediums than newspapers, which I was working there at the time as, or television, I guess, or the internet forums are a bit more interactive, but still mainly reporting about things from a distance. I believe that in a way theater can bring things close, and I think in this work that was very important.
I just like to, at this point, warn a little bit, because the time is flying fast. Now, in the original time frame, we have like 8 minutes left, but I was promised we get 5 more minutes. So right now we have like 12 to go.
I didn't even show anything of Ciudades Paralelas.
Yeah, so jump to the next one, and if anybody has questions, we'll keep them for a little while and see one more project. Okay? Yes.
I just wanted maybe then to finish by talking about a project which is not really exactly mine in the strict sense as an artist, but I started curating sometimes as well, and together with Lola Arias, actually we invented a festival which had many aims, but one was explicitly sort of to change, I guess, the way audiences could work in cities. It's a project called Ciudades Paralelas, and normally theater spaces look the same all over the world, and therefore projects can easily tour, but we wanted these projects to happen in the city. So we invited 8 artists to do projects for specific places that exist in any city around the world. So there is one project for a train station, another one for a factory, another one for a house, another one for a court, a roof, a library, a shopping mall. The festival is a transportable one, so it happened in 4 different cities in the first year, which was Warsaw, and it will happen in Cork actually in 2 weeks in Ireland. The first 4 cities were Warsaw, Zurich, Berlin, and Buenos Aires. And maybe I show just a small excerpt of a project that took part in it, which they were all commissions for these spaces, and the idea was in a way to transform the perception of these spaces by different rules how audiences could behave. In this case, it's mainly an audio track. It's a Hamburg-based group called Ligna, and you will now the person that saw it only in one city, but you will be able to see it in 4 cities in the same That's just like the video editing, the way it is done. It's a radio play about shopping malls, and but the shopping mall doesn't know that we're doing it in their place. Because we don't tell them, but we distribute small radio transmitters or receivers actually to the audience, which spreads all over the place.
Herzlich willkommen. Ich freue mich, dass Sie da sind.
Stellen Sie sich an das Geländer und betrachten Sie die Architektur der Passage.
Beeindruckend, nicht?
Aber auch etwas langweilig.
Wir möchten Sie gerne in die erste Internationale der Shopping Malls als Agenten aufnehmen.
Aber es bedarf einiger kleiner Prüfungen. Wenden Sie sich bitte um und lehnen Sie sich an das Geländer. Legen Sie die rechte Hand auf das Geländer. Wenn Sie jetzt das linke Bein vor das rechte stellen, sodass die Beine überkreuzt sind, wiederholen Sie eine Bewegung, die hier immer wieder ausgeführt wird. Nehmen Sie nun das rechte Bein vor das linke. Kratzen Sie sich mit der rechten Hand am Ohr. Streichen Sie sich mit derselben Hand durch die Haare. Nehmen Sie jetzt die Hand herunter und berühren Sie mit der linken Hand Ihre juckende Nase.
Weder Wachleute noch Videokameras dürfen Ihre Geste bemerken. Zweite Prüfung. Jemand anderes werden.
So you have the people that came to see the show, they booked the ticket, they got the radio receiver, and they walk into the shopping mall without really knowing where the show is happening. They listen to instructions which they reproduce and thereby potentially become the actors.
Beobachten Sie nun in mir die Passanten, die hinter
but in the same moment there's a second layer of audience members who are people who are just shopping in the shopping mall and suddenly see how people start to behave in a weird way. Maybe I just go quickly to...
Wo mag sie wohl herkommen? Welches ist ihre Nationalität, ihre soziale Herkunft?
So you start following people. In the beginning it's very subtle and you didn't get kicked out of the shopping malls
Setzen Sie
mostly
die Füße auf,
because
wenn Sie
it's
die
just
Füße
small
aufsetzen.
things that are
Beobachten Sie Ihre Hände.
Unauffällig.
invisibly happening.
Imitieren Sie Ihre Gesten.
But then later things become a bit more. I'll just fast forward to the end.
Shopping Malls schrieben ihren Besuchern vor, ein einheitliches Tempo zu gehen. Passt eure Schritte dem Rhythmus an. Bleibt stehen. Geht rückwärts.
Lasst die Menschen und Geschäfte um euch herum immer kleiner werden, bis sie verschwinden.
Geht wieder vorwärts. Beschleunigt euren Schritt. Bleibt im Takt.
Spürt ihr, wie die Anziehungskraft der Geschäfte nachlässt?
Haltet in der Bewegung ein und streckt einen Arm nach vorne aus.
Die Glieder erstarren in einer rätselhaften Geste.
Dreht die Handfläche nach oben.
Und der Mensch ist nur mehr ein Zeichen unter den Sternenbildern.
Geht weiter.
Es passiert etwas.
Die Bewegung wird zum Ereignis.
Tanzt.
And obviously you couldn't hear the music out in the shopping mall, but then people who were going to buy something stopped by and asked, where can I get those headphones? And security people started to come and say, can I talk to the supervisor? Or whom are you talking to with the headphone? And
Wandelt durch das Traumhaus, als sei nichts gewesen.
Was one of the cities tougher than the other? Was it the same experience in all, in this case, 4 cities?
in the case of the shopping mall, it was like more people danced in South America, as you could guess, than in Switzerland, but it was more difficult to find shopping malls in Switzerland because Switzerland had, or at least Zurich, doesn't really have such a tradition of shopping malls so easily. In Warsaw, we had all the sort of phrases that they take from Walter Benjamin and Guy Debord. In Warsaw, they found a bit different echo because older people grown up with under Leninists somehow ruling, they found this left-wing attitude against consumerism a bit weird. So it was, having different impacts in different cities. But with other projects, the research in the cities took longer and were more, the results were much more different in the case of the factory work, for instance, which...
For me, the guess would be that the reaction of the shopping mall as an entity would be the same all over the world, because it's kind of the same. So security would react and they wanted to talk to the supervisor. They want to have control of that shopping space.
Yeah, but the role of shopping malls are different in South America. In Buenos Aires, for instance, the sweatshops where the T-shirts sold in the shopping mall in the north of the city are produced in sweatshops in the south of the city by illegal Bolivian workers. So that's a different... and people from the middle class are sort of sometimes, or the upper class more, are trying to take refuge in shopping malls because they're so well protected from the dangerous city that they live in, apparently. Whereas in Switzerland, it's more a trashy place to go to a shopping mall, I guess, for...
And who is this company that did this piece? It looks really interesting.
Ligna. They're coming from making radio, actually. They're based in Hamburg. There was a question over there, I think. You can... If you ask it, I can repeat it, then it's also mic'd.
Just curious if was it pre-recorded or was it broadcast live into the audience's
The audio was pre-recorded and then broadcasted live, but it wasn't produced live. Like the actors were not there when it was being spoken, the voices.
I was interested to know, did you interview the spectators? How they understood this?
Well, our paying audience, quite some of them talked to us afterwards. And or are you talking about the second layer audience?
No, I mean the participants who come there and view this. So what's their understanding of this?
Very different ones. We had there was a young generation audience who really took it as a game, I guess, or like how much do you dare to do as a group. I think it has a lot to do with the idea of social networking. A bit flash mob is something similar, but not timely so organized and normally not taking 45 minutes, but therefore I think people are more used to that kind of performances.
No, it was just this about the group structure, because it seems that it's very important for the piece that they were grouped together in the way of interacting. That you couldn't do this audio piece being one spectator at a time. That the way of them acting as a group, also like confronting the normal structures of a mall, is because they're a group of how many people at the same time trying it.
Well, as many as there was audience. We had up to 100 radio receivers. Sometimes there were only 40 or 50. But you're right.
But
being alone there, it wouldn't be really interesting, because they call the medium radio ballet. Mm-hmm. It's a concept that they invented. And yeah, there is something choreographic about it that works like a mass choreography. Yeah.
But it also emphasizes something I'm interested in the theater situation. I mean, the choreography of the space. So they seem to be emphasizing on the movements that is actually choreographed by the architects of the. So there's a pace in the shopping mall, and there's also in a theater situation. I mean, half the directing is already done by the seating and the whole situation and the context, no? So and also the same in the shopping mall, just that it's in a shopping mall instead of a theater. would you develop that in 2 minutes?
Yeah, I think that is very much their background theory, that certain public spaces, or especially the shopping mall, sort of brings along a way of moving. I don't know if anybody saw the film by Harun Foroki about I think it's called the one, I don't know about the English title, Schöpfer der Einkaufswelten, it's in German. It's about architects of shopping malls, and it's really deillusionating about how foreseen it is, the way that the consumer moves, like how they make your gaze go from toast to jam to champagne and how things, but I mean everybody knows this somehow, but when you hear the experts talk in that movie, it's quite striking. And I guess in general the Ciudades Paralelas, which means parallel cities, I don't know if I told this, project is about this question, sort of what is a train station beyond its local manifestation, or about beyond its historical context? What is a train station in itself? Mariano Pensotti made something with writers authors from the city that write about people passing by, and you see that there's something about in these architectures that conditions you in a certain way. And I guess the whole project is about making visible what are these patterns.
I think that our time is up. I'd like to thank Dramaten and Helena, but also the Bergmanfestivalen inviting us in to talk. And thank you, Stefan, for sharing your projects.
Thank you for coming.
And thank you, the audience.